And believe all is well this morning with everyone. We do have, of course, our lobbyist on the line with us, Mr. Dave Shep. And David, we'll turn it over to you right now.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Walker. It is good to see everybody this morning. Just a quick update before we get to, I think, the meat of the agenda, which is the approval of the legislative statement. This has concluded, today concludes the first week of committee meetings in Tallahassee. So they formally came together this week. It was a very abbreviated calendar. The Senate began on Monday, wrapped up yesterday. The House had 2 days worth of meetings, Wednesday and Thursday. And for the most part, what we saw were agency presentations. So it was an opportunity for them to come together, formalize the committee structures, introduce the staff, et cetera, and then have the agenda or the agencies come in and give an update on where they are, what has been going on for the past 10 months since last time they were in Tallahassee, and other projects that they were working on carried over from last session. There were only 2 bills that were heard this week that have begun the process. House Bill 7, dealing with COVID liability protection. That does include local governments as well. Essentially, it protects businesses, governments, religious institutions, nonprofits, schools, et cetera, from liability for COVID. So if you had employees come in or customers come in, it would shield them, the business, from liability for contracting COVID. It is retroactive in nature. This is being fast-tracked by the House, and there's a companion bill in the Senate, which will probably get started up in 2 weeks. That and a COVID fraud bill were the only 2 that were heard this week, as I mentioned. And it's definitely a different scene in Tallahassee than what we're used to. The Senate is in complete lockdown. The only people that are allowed in the Senate, other than staff, are folks who are making presentations to committee. The House is slightly more open, but they are still handling all presentations to the committees from a remote location. We do not anticipate that is going to change through the committee process and is likely to carry over into session as well. Likewise, DMS, Department of Management Services, has already sent out a memo that they will not be renting out any facilities, public facilities in the Capitol complex, at least through the end of committees, and again, most likely through the end of session. Knowing that, a lot of the days that we're used to are canceling at this time. My understanding is Polk County Day will be canceled as well. So it's going to be a very different scenario than what we are all used to on a regular basis. Hopefully this is just a one-year version of this scenario. So I just want to kind of give you that overview. The other thing also, there was a first budget presentation yesterday in Senate Appropriations from Amy Baker. She is the legislature's chief financial economist, and basically illustrating it may not be as bad financially as what it looked like a few months ago. However, it's still going to be a very difficult budget year, potentially to the tune of about $2 billion hole that they need to fill. Obviously, things can change at the federal level. We have, just last night, it was announced a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package will be presented by the new administration. And so we'll have to wait to see what that's going to look like for state and local funds as well. So with that being the background, yes, sir.
If I could, and please forgive me for interrupting, I just want to make sure while we're in the subject of meetings and how we will meet, could you share more, I guess, as to what was learned as I was in some meetings this past few days with the FLC Advocacy Committee meeting and all, where, as you just said, the Senate's on lockdown, and only meetings after they're going to even have will be permitted somewhere, I think, in the Leon County Civic Center kind of situation, by appointment only. But the House, if I understand correctly from what I heard and what you just shared as well, sir, we'll have maybe some meetings face to face. Is that correct or not?
Yes, sir. At this time, the House is slightly more open to face-to-face meetings. They are discouraged in the Senate, primarily virtual in nature, but in the House, you are able to access the Capitol if you have a meeting scheduled with a legislator and they wish to meet in person.
Thank you.
Certainly. And the last thing that I wanted to mention insofar as meetings as well is next Tuesday is the Polk Delegation meeting. Commissioner Walker will be presenting on behalf of the city of Lakeland. That is in the afternoon. However, our goal is to have him back to you in time for the City Commission meeting as well. But Commissioner Walker and I will get together on Monday to go over what we're going to be able to pack into a 3-minute presentation. So just want to mention that that is taking place next week as well. Back in December, we had the opportunity to present the legislative statement for your review. There have not been any major changes to it. We have added a few bill numbers and things of that nature. And so my understanding for this meeting today is to formally adopt the legislative statement for next week's delegation meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners have.
Commissioner, I think McCauley has that her hand up. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks, Dave, for being here. We appreciate it. So after I went through this and started looking at it a little deeper, I know that it's similar to our previous legislative statements that we've had since I've been on the commission. And I'm wondering, since it is COVID and maybe just in an effort of consolidating resources, should we prioritize, the utmost important things to the city of Lakeland right now, not cutting away anything, like we're always supportive of Florida Poly and Polk State and those entities and all these different topics. But should we drill this down, especially since Senator Stargell is part of the budget committee, the head of it for the Senate, and that we have a little more weight in Tallahassee through our delegation? Would it behoove us to take our 5 top things and say, these are the 5 things we really want help with in an effort that we can kind of consolidate resources and get what we absolutely need? Because I feel like from year to year, seeing these continue, and you're so good at telling us what sort of falls off the agendas for the House and for the Senate when things don't have a sponsor or anything like that. But would it be in our best interest to narrow and go to our delegation and say, here's our top 4 or 5 things?
Absolutely. No, that's certainly not a problem whatsoever. And typically what we try and do is gather all the information that for the issues that are important for the city, all the different departments, and consolidate that all together. But as we talk to the legislators, as you've seen when we do our meetings with them, we typically do boil it down to the top 4 or 5 items. So we can prepare a document, absolutely, with the commission's direction for what those 5 items are. I would certainly think affordable housing funding, transportation funding, things of that nature would fall into that category, but certainly happy to put together a brief 1-pager that can be handed to them as well.
I think that would be beneficial, at least for me, just in, my personal life, how I come to contact, that if I knew that this is our number 1, number 2, that is better than having a laundry list, to speak on. And I would just say since Commissioner Walker and I are the 2 commissioners that serve on this committee, for everybody else who's in attendance, for me personally, I would think the transportation is key, and the affordable housing, as you said. When we look at community development, if we had to pick one, I would absolutely say affordable housing. And then going into the finances, that is all seems very contiguous to every other year that we keep our eye on those taxes and just sort of see what's happening coming down the pike. I know that the building inspector certification has continually been on there, so I don't know if we should interchange that with broadband access. Law enforcement obviously is big, but if I had to pick 2, I would say, the I-4 State Road 33 interchange and the airport construction, because we haven't heard from DOT or staff yet that our DOT funding is cut, but we have heard that at the transit level for Citrus Connection and Lamb's Head. So that's something I think that all of us should sort of have our antenna up on, because it's going to be pretty harsh year. And if we're talking about, $2 billion hole coming from the feds to the state, that's a lot of money. And then if you're talking about the federal government doing another 1.9, that totals $4.9 trillion that the government has borrowed against itself on the federal level. So I think we really need to be cognizant of those things, because that municipal finance, those taxes might go up, as a ripple effect part of this. But just for me, I think affordable housing and transportation would be the 2 keys.
Well, hearing that, Commissioner McCauley, and I can concur with most of what was said, especially so, because I know, even as I'm sure Mr. Shep knows, that the advocacy committee meeting with the state FLC organization, they have done the same thing, narrowing it down to about, I think it was 6 particular issues, even though they may have 10 or 12. So I think we could do something like that, and I want to make sure that we have a consensus of the committee, of the commission, to have Mr. Shep narrow down to one pager, including, and I would agree with a couple of things you already mentioned with those particular issues that you had as your 1, 2, and 3, I think, concern or priority, Commissioner McCauley. Do I have any more comments from anyone else about narrowing it down to one pager and make sure we do that, even though they would get the entire legislative statement, they would have still, when we speak with them on next Tuesday, the one pager that we would hand out to them, as I'm handing out either another one pager as well for FLC. Any other comments?
Commissioner Walker, can you hear me?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Excuse me, how you doing this morning, Commissioner Madden?
Great. It's hard to find people raising their hand with all the little squares, I admit. Yes, thank you so much, both of you, for your service on this committee. I'm absolutely, in agreement with those suggestions. I will say that it does give me pause knowing that we're not going to be present in Tallahassee because, was it last year, while we were there, we, discovered, that there was a bill that would, basically remove Florida Poly, from being an institution on its own, kind of sweep it under with University of Florida. So, things like that give me, not fear necessarily, but, just to think that we're not going to have maybe our eye on the ball like we typically would when we're making those trips up there to speak to our representatives personally and to just kind of be there and hear those things. So I did want to say that, to you, Mr. Shep, since you are, our liaison, we're really going to be counting on you this year to be our eyes and ears, really like never before, because this is, like the adage goes, don't waste a crisis. We don't want people with nefarious ideas up there using a crisis to sweep things like Florida Poly, under the rug. So I would just want to say, from my point, I totally agree with my colleagues on the most important items with regard to money allocations. But for me, that innovation district is a very, very high priority for our future. And anything that has to do with Florida Poly is always an imperative for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Madden. Anyone else? Commissioner Reed.
Walker, if I...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. I apologize. I just wanted to respond. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I want to make sure.
Go ahead, Bill. You go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, David.
I thought Mayor Muntz had his hand up earlier.
I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry.
As a point of housekeeping, if you go to the top of your screen, all of us, and look at the who's talking and everyone and all that, and flip to active cameras, you will see that it concentrates it and makes it much easier if you're presiding over any portion or answering questions to see just the people who raise their hands, which is my cheat mechanism to be able to do that. And if you want to see everybody who's on, you just simply flip back to everyone, and you can, of course, see who's participating. The active cameras is a really valuable tool. I would concur completely with Commissioner McCauley and the caution of Commissioner Madden in both of those regards. And I know, I suspect we would have probably heard about Poly, but when you're there, it makes it seem even more important. And so the issue is added vigilance, and we really appreciate everything that you can do, and perhaps even over communicating a bit back to us some of the things and trends you see. And I think that's what we're hearing. This is not a year to prioritize anything that is not the most essential things we need to be focusing on. And there's not going to be hospitality taxes for any of those things, even as points of discussion. So we have to think about just the things that are the most important for us to protect and maintain. And I think the comments have been made to that end, and I agree completely.
Okay, I think Commissioner Reed, you wanted to have a comment before we have David come back on.
Yeah, because Dave can answer my question for me. And that was actually going to be directed toward Dave. Dave, how does we get money from the federal government for roads and stuff like that that comes down to the state? Because I just must have been bored or something. I was watching TV and watching the Ways and Means Committee just passed a 30-cent gas tax across the board for all gallons of gas across the United States. Will be coming forward to, I guess that'll generate a lot of money for maybe the Green Deal, or maybe it's going to trickle down to Florida. But it's unfortunate. It's a regressive tax for people who probably can't afford extra pay gasoline, but it's going to be I guess it's going to go to a good cause.
Well, to answer the question on the federal side, we are anticipating that there will be a large amount of revenue coming down to the state and the local governments through this next stimulus package. As far as the gas tax increase, I don't have any information on that for you at this point in time, but we are still waiting to see what that will actually look like with the revenue coming down, what limitations will be put upon it. As you recall, in the CARES Act last year, there were significant limitations put on the money that came down to the states and to the local as well, what it could be spent on. It could not fill budget holes. So it remains to be seen how this one will be formulated as they move forward under the new administration. But from the tea leaves that were read during the last CARES Act, I imagine there'll be a lot more flexibility in the use of these funds. And hopefully that will help the state as they prepare their budget as well. Just stepping back a second to Commissioner Madden's and Mayor Mutz's comments as well. That's what you pay us for. That is our job, is to be there, to be your eyes and ears before the legislature as these issues come up. Obviously, the Florida Poly issue was unique last year, where it popped up during committee process. The timing worked out well that the commission happened to be in town to be able to work with the delegation members as well. But quite frankly, in this situation that we are experiencing now, that's what we're there for. And so our team at the Southern Group is ready to work on your behalf. We'll be vigilant. Everything that comes up that is a priority for the city, every new issue that pops up, we're there to work on your behalf. I do want to mention as well, our delegation has been very open to meetings via virtual formats if they can't do it in person. So we'll continue to have those opportunities as we move forward as well. It just won't be the structured day on the Hill where we go around and we meet and we wait and we meet and we wait like we're used to. So it's going to take a different format, but still the same end goal on our end.
And thank you for sharing that, Mr. Shep, because I know, as Commissioner Madden has mentioned, this year will be a little different, and we will be able to have those virtual meetings, as we can say, one-on-one in some respect, with our delegation. So again, if it's poised that we see we have a particular issue or a related subject matter that would need our attention, we can make it happen by, going through, of course, Mr. Shep, and making sure we get the appointment that we need with whatever particular legislator we need to see or talk, hearing what I've heard. Okay, Commissioner McCauley.
Really quick, Mr. Walker, are we going to, as a committee, have more regular updates? Because I feel like our committee maybe only does this once or twice a year, but just in preparation for session. So will we have scheduled legislative committee meetings at other agenda studies so that we can stay up to date?
I would believe, if it's as we have done, of course, different kind of year this year, of course, because of what we have to deal with. I think it would be incumbent upon us to do something more with more of a regular basis than we have done in the past. Simply because, as David just shared, it's incumbent, I think, upon us to make sure we're on top of things and we know what's going on and keep ourselves abreast of what's going on. And certainly we would ask Mr. Shep to make sure that happens. So I would look for us to have more of a ongoing kind of a dialogue with the commission as time moves along and as bills moves along, different bills, of course, through the session. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I'm on the committee as well. And of course, I get updates from Mr. Shep on a regular basis. I assume you guys do as well. And I'm sure that he would communicate with us by email. And of course, again, we would hopefully share these with our commissioners, and perhaps we get, as a commission, get together and categorize the issues that we feel from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 3, whatever we decide. But I'm quite confident that I get regular updates from Mr. Shep, and so I presume he'll hear our voices and we'll maybe do it a little more consistently.
Commissioner Walker, I just want to interject that I'm available to whatever the schedule works best for the committee. If we want to do like a standing weekly call or however y'all wish to put that together, I'm happy to accommodate.
Well, I know we hope to decide, well, two things I want to make sure we get done is one, in time of course, as we go through here, almost time to go to another 2 meetings. But if we could bring a consensus to what I think Commissioner McCauley's initial comments were, and I've heard a couple other commissioners mention those comments as well, to even though we need to adopt the 21 legislative statement as a whole, but in adopting that statement, we would ask that we at least consider those, I think it was about 4 or 5 different subject matters that would be poignant for us to make sure we keep it for our legislators. Could we have that clarified right now, make sure we, as we come to some kind of closure here very soon? Commissioner McCall, I see you there again.
Yes, I would make a motion that we adopt the Lakeland, I'm trying to find the title of it, Dave, the City of Lakeland legislative statement for the 2021 legislative year, adopted as is, with the caveat that Mr. Shep will recommend to us our top 5 priorities for the City of Lakeland after hearing this conversation today.
Do I have a second? Have a second by Committee Member Reed. All in favor? Aye. All right, have it. Mr. Shep, you have your homework, your assignment. And again, too, as he has and will continue to, I'm sure, keep us in the loop with things happening as things go along. We can, let me share, I guess, some more comments with him. I mean, talk with him, excuse me, off record in some respect, to see how often we might want to come together. We'll talk on Monday, I know, Mr. Shep, about the presentation and all for Tuesday. And committee members, I will make sure that we look at how often we can maybe start meeting as this year kind of be a little different kind of a thing that we used to having in the past. Are there any other concerns for any other committee members at this point before we come to a closure? Commissioner McCall, I see your hands again.
Sorry, Commissioner Walker, I don't mean to be a pain today, but so this is coming from committee and will show up on our agenda Monday for the commission to ratify it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? Seeing none, David, is there anything else you want to share before we close out the meeting?
I'll have a draft to you today for your review.
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
All right. We have a motion to dismiss our meeting here. Second. All right. All in favor? Aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Walker, for leading us through that session and for the comments by other commissioners and Mr. Shep. We'll now move to our municipal boards and committee meetings. And this is a big load because it's the beginning of the year. So Commissioner Madden, we appreciate your taking this on as its chair.
Thank you, Mayor. As long as I can see my fine print here on my phone version. So the recommendations that we have today are many, as the mayor enunciated. The first one is the Airport Advisory Board. There's a recommendation from Jean Conrad to reappoint Greg Gibson and Carl Newman to 3-year terms beginning February 5th, 2021 and ending February 4th, 2024. Mr. Gibson serves as an at-large member and Mr. Newman serves as an aviation representative. There's also on the advisory board for the airport an appointment to Kenneth Stevens to a 3-year term beginning January 19th, 2021 and ending January 18th, 2024. Mr. Stevens will serve as the economic development representative. Mayor, are you all hearing me okay? Yeah, okay. Do you want me to take these one at a time since it's such a big portion?
By organization, yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to accept the recommendations for the Airport Advisory Board.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Mayor, aren't you on the committee?
Sorry, I'm the only second on that. Yes, I was waiting to give someone else that room, and I apologize.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of those recommendations for the Airport Advisory Board? Say yes, hands yes. Motion carries unanimously. The second recommendation is for the CRA Advisory Board. The recommendation is from Elise Drumgo to reappoint Brandon Eady and Harry Bryant to 3-year terms beginning April 2nd, 2021 and ending April 1st, 2024. Mr. Eady fills the downtown representative seat and Mr. Bryant fills the midtown representative seat. Do you have a motion to approve this recommendation? Commissioner McCarley, and a second? The mayor. And any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. The third recommendation is for the Historic Preservation Board. The recommendation from Matthew Lyons to appoint Cesar Perez and Michelle Sylvester to a 3-year term beginning January 19th, 2021 and ending January 18th, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve the Historic Preservation Board? Commissioner McCarley, and a second by the mayor. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the Lakeland Housing Authority, recommendation from Mayor Bill Mutz to reappoint Shelley Asbury to a 4-year term beginning March 18th, 2021 and ending March 17th, 2025. For the Lakeland Housing Authority, a motion by Commissioner McCarley, second by the mayor. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries unanimously. Our fifth recommendation is for the Nuisance Abatement Board. Recommendation from Mayor Bill Mutz to reappoint Don Chapman to a 3-year term beginning March 5th, 2021 and ending March 4th, 2024. And also to appoint James Ring to a 3-year term beginning March 5th, 2021 and ending March 4th, 2024. For the Nuisance Abatement Board, do we have a motion? From Commissioner McCarley and a second from the mayor. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Carries unanimously. The sixth recommendation is for the Planning and Zoning Board. The recommendation from Matthew Lyons to reappoint Leanne Lunds to a 3-year term beginning March 4th, 2021 and ending March 3rd, 2024. For the Planning and Zoning Board, do we have a motion from Commissioner McCarley and a second by the mayor? Any discussion? All in favor? And the motion carries unanimously. For the final recommendation, it's the Utility Committee. The recommendation is from Mayor Bill Mutz to appoint Sarah Corona to a 3-year term beginning February 1st, 2021 and ending January 31st, 2024. Ms. Corona will fill the residential outside city limit seat. The second is to appoint Dan Tillman to a 3-year term beginning March 6, 2021 and ending March 5th, 2024. Mr. Tillman will fill the residential inside city limit seat. And to reappoint Ashley Troutman and Jack English to terms beginning April 2nd, 2021 and ending April 1st, 2024. Both Mr. Troutman and Mr. English fill an undesignated residential seat. Do we have a motion for the Utility Committee recommendations? Commissioner McCarley, and a second by the mayor. Any discussion on these recommendations? All in favor of the recommendations for the Utility Committee? And do you have a question, Commissioner Walker?
I do, and I know I'm not on the committee, but am I right to ask a question of the committee?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
With the recommendations made by Mayor Mutz for those particular seats, I just want to make sure, could you share with us what, I know we have a number like, what, 13, I think it is that correct? Am I saying that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, I know we lost Dr. Childs, but now who else do we lose? I'm trying to make sure I can picture what our.
We also lose, and I just went blank in my head. This is
Daryl Johnson.
Okay,
yes,
Daryl, and we lost both of them, right?
We lost both of them, and the terms for both Jack English and Ashley Troutman are this to be renewed this year for a second term. So both of these candidates that we're bringing on have background and experience in utilities, which is really beneficial as we go forward.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood the makeup there.
That's why, Dr. Childs came off in January, whereas Daryl comes off for the March meeting. And that's why this is that start date.
Right, I got it. I wanted to make sure I was having it clear in my thinking. Thank you so very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Is there any other discussion? All in favor for the recommendations to the Utility Committee, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. There is another just point informational item. Certainly all the Lakeland City Commission 2021 commitment committee assignments have been made, and you can find them on our website. And the city clerk announced that the firefighters elected Taylor Riley and Derek McBrayer to serve on the Firefighters Pension Board. Their term will begin December 1st, 2020 and end December 1st, 2024. And that concludes our actionable items for the Municipal Board and Committee meeting. Do we have any other discussion? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner McCarley, and a second. Mayor, all in favor of adjourning? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Madden, for that. That'll bring us to the agenda study as long as we are past 8:30, which we are. So as you can see, when we kick this off, we have a presentation about the municipal records and elections by our fabulous city clerk, Kelly Coos, and then the announcement of the holiday tree decorating contest check presentation to the United Way, which will be very, very nice to be done. There will be one proclamation for this meeting. It doesn't show here, but it is for the ovarian cancer announcement. And so we'll make that change. We'll look at the approval of the minutes, but this was also the consent agenda opportunity to take a look at that. And you'll see Finance Director under 7A is a consent item, is the only other one beyond the minutes. So Mr. Brossart, if you could walk us through that, that would be great.
Yes, and good morning, everyone. We have one appropriation request. This is from Fleet Management. There are two rear loaders in solid waste that are scheduled to be replaced in October of this coming year, which is fiscal year 22. What Gary McLean has noticed with very large vehicles such as these rear loaders, the time for construction has extended somewhat, and so it's his recommendation, and with Gene Ginn's agreement as well in solid waste, that we actually order those two for construction now so that they are received on time in early October or November. The cost associated with it is $557,586. The recommendation is that we'll just take it out of the Fleet Management Reserve Fund with the expectation that between the auction monies that we receive from the sale of the two current vehicles, plus what already has been reserved, it will all be put back to whole by October 1st.
Are there any questions for Mr. Brossart on that? And is it all right? Yes, Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Mr. Brossart, for that update. I did want to just, as we consider the life cycle of our fleet vehicles and, know that we're kind of coming into a new administration with more of a hyper focus on fuel cell technology and, cleaner transportation. I'm just curious, the price point on these vehicles is certainly, large, and where are we on our emerging technology and with discussions and decisions with regard to retrofitting some of our fleet to EVs or fuel cell electric vehicles?
Well, Mr. McLean is actually taking care of a family member out of town today. Gene Ginn has jumped on. He can probably talk about what he and Gary have talked about for those particular vehicles, but I think Gary's probably going to be the one that needs to talk to us as a body, probably in an email back or a workshop. I'm not prepared to talk about that, but I'll let Gene jump in on this.
Mr. Ginn could probably enlighten us a smidge on that.
Yes, we can. Gary and I have looked into the startup cost of natural gas vehicles and the long-term benefit. We would have to keep the trucks probably 15 plus years to get a return on our investment. And then the electric vehicles are just beginning to come on the market. That would probably be something we could look at, since Lakeland Electric is part of our city. But those are in the very early stages, and we're looking at about $400,000 just for the chassis for electric vehicles. So they're coming, but I think it's more of a 5 to 7 year before we can see something we could actually use.
So does that work well with the life cycle of the vehicles that we're purchasing now? So, certainly I know it's, kind of future focused, but I'm just looking, if we looked at our fleet and the age of our fleet and the life cycle of our fleet on the different departments, and knew, kind of gauged when that technology would be onboarding and when we would be at the end of a life cycle, kind of like with, it's wonderful that we actually are not having to leave terribly stranded assets with our coal, because it actually is at the age to decommission, and it also then pairs well with our efforts to have cleaner energy. So I'd like to kind of consider our fleet the same way. Certainly I don't want to just go be the tip of the sword and spend too much on vehicles before the technology's there, but I want to have the foresight to say, these are the vehicles that will be coming to the end of their life cycle at right about the time when fuel cell technology and hydrogen filling stations are coming on board in Florida. So that's kind of, just, I would like to make sure that, when we can chat with, the fleet department, that we are able to kind of keep that in mind, just, going forward and making our plans that we're strategic about, integrating those new technologies.
Absolutely. That's something Gary and I look at every time vehicles come up for replacement, and annually at the different events that we attend that showcase these new vehicles. So just to figure out if it's a good fit for us, and a cost benefit analysis, and we certainly look every year as vehicles come available.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I can add that Lakeland Electric has been endorsing the use of electric vehicles for some number of years. Actually, Mr. Ivy and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about how he's very interested in wanting to expand that. I know that Mr. McLean has talked about trying to find ways to replace some of the smaller in-town vehicles that we have, whether that is in, say, code enforcement or building inspection or something along those lines. As the technology improves, as the price points decrease, I know those discussions have been had. What I don't know is about the larger vehicles. But we sure will pass along your question to Gary, and I'm sure that next week he can provide some information between he and Heath Frederick can provide some information back to the 7 of you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yes, ma'am.
And to that end, and out of that arena in my own personal life, when we're dealing particularly with trucks and heavy hydraulics and high peak needs for pressure, those are latent electrical adaptations, and to the tip of the sword, I'd want other people to spend a little bit of time having their own experiences in that, so that when we learn, we probably wouldn't be the earliest adopter, would be my cautioning. But I love the sustainability questioning that you're providing in that, and I'm sure Gene does too. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. Gene, do we have any vehicles that are on LP right now?
No, we do not. Our entire solid waste fleet is diesel.
We've had trucks on LP, vehicles on LP before, haven't we?
No, not
never
in the
seen
solid
something.
waste fleet.
Okay, all right.
Gary, I mean, we might have had something somewhere else in the city, but Gary would have to answer that question. But the solid waste has always been diesel.
We've actually run numbers. Gary actually approached, even back when Rick Lilliquist was here a number of years ago. We were approached at different times about moving our fleet all to an alternative fuel, propane and natural gas. And both times we have done it within probably the last 7 or 8 years. The numbers just really didn't shake out. We'd end up having to run the vehicles much longer than their frames would last. To Gene's point about having to run the vehicles 15 years, right now, Gene, you're having to flip them about every 5 to 6?
The plan is 5 to 7 based on use, and then we can certainly extend it if it's been the cost per mile has been low enough.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner Reed? Okay. Do you want to leave this on consent agenda? Is that the sentiment of the commission? All right. Leaving it there, we won't need to have Gary making that report. So perhaps you could give us that update in an email to the commission. And that way we could get some of that feedback back to us, and it'd be time efficient for you as well. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so that takes us back to in fact, we do not have an equalization hearing in this meeting. We go to public hearings, and we have our second readings, and the first one will be 20-045. Our city attorney, Palmer Davis, will take that, and Commissioner Reed, yes? First.
May I make a suggestion? We move number 5 up to number 1?
That's
the Carolyn Lakes, we could do that. Would you? And you're doing that because?
I think we'll have a big group of people show up for the meeting on Tuesday.
All right. That's why we're having it at RV Funding Center, of course, on Tuesday. All right. If that's all right with you, City Attorney Davis, that's fine. Let's go to number 5.
we probably want to republish the agenda just to make sure everyone knows that that's coming up at the beginning. But
I'm sorry. I missed what Commissioner Reed was saying. You mean literally move it on the agenda to number 1. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I was thinking you were just doing that for discussion purpose now. Okay, so I think that's wonderful for all the people who are attending as well for their time. Excellent suggestion, sir. Do you want to take that now also in that order, Commissioner Reed? Doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll move it, and then let's just take A1 and walk through them, and so we can keep them sequential.
All right, A1 and A2 are actually related. They're the Veterans Administration Clinic close to Sam's on Lakeland Highlands Road. I'm not sure how much you want to go into detail today, since that we already went over these at the last agenda study, but I know Teresa's prepared to make a full presentation if that's what you like.
Yeah, let's talk about them both. Commissioner McCook.
My only question on that, I don't know that we need another presentation. That's up to my fellow commissioners. But my only question is, we're still not knowing where the VA is going to select, right? Do we have a date of when that selection will happen on site?
I have not heard anything yet. Teresa, have you heard anything?
Okay.
The last I heard that it was anticipated to be by the end of this month, and from what I've just read in some media publications, is that this is the preferred site, but I don't have direct knowledge of that or any direct indication from the GSA.
Thank
you. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. Don was ahead of me, actually, but it was ironic. I use that road quite frequently, and Teresa might can assist me in some ways. The school on Edgewood Drive 2, or whatever you call it, south, I noticed that the traffic is backed up all the way from the school, all the way back to Lakeland Highlands Road in front of the shopping center in the afternoons extensively. And then last week I took about a 2-minute video. I was coming off the Parkway and coming up to visit Sam's a minute, and the traffic, both lanes was backed up from Meadowbrook all the way to the Polk Parkway. And I don't know what's going on, but that appears that road's getting heavily used, more so than I anticipated, and most times it's pretty traffic flow. But this one particular day, I don't know why, but from the Polk Parkway all the way back to the fire station, it was wall-to-wall cars. I've got a video of it. It took about 2 minutes, and then I didn't know that. I guess there's stacking lanes back along Edgewood Drive South for the school to get out, and they wrap all the way around almost on the grass in front of the Winn-Dixie Shopping Center.
Yes, I haven't seen that personally, but that's my understanding as well from hearing from others. I don't know if this has been an ongoing issue or if it's just gotten worse with what's been happening over the past year in terms of changes in scheduling and responses to COVID. But I would note that, like you said, typically Lakeland Highlands is free flowing, and it's just at certain times of the day during the weekday that it does have those issues, and it's directly related to the school. And I don't know if Chuck has anything to add about different options that have been looked at before to try to alleviate that traffic. I know that there were some queuing modifications that were looked at one time off of South Edgewood and I think coming into maybe some adjoining property along that roadway. But I don't know if those options are being pursued any further.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is pretty much related to COVID. Traffic operations and our folks have worked for a number of years, of course, as the South McKeel Academy has expanded on South Edgewood Drive. And, with each expansion has come a whole new set of operational challenges. And so the last time was probably 2 years ago or so, maybe 3, where the school actually reconfigured some of its internal driveways to create a two-way operation, which really helped the situation quite a bit. They also worked with Parks and Recreation to use Cypress Youth sports complex for part of its queuing. And so for a while, they were actually having staff stationed at Cypress Youth entrance and were radioing down to the school, as the queue would queue up or would clear off of South Edgewood further down. And so they were managing traffic that way, and it was working very well. And I think one of the big changes that's happened with COVID, and we'll confirm with the school, it's probably related to the bus service that South McKeel has operated. For a while, they had a pickup point at the Church of the Nazarene there at Hallam and Lakeland Highlands Road, where parents were able to put their kids on an actual bus or buses to get them to campus, and that seemed to help out a lot. And we'll check with the school to see if they're still operating that bus service. But really, this seems to have been an issue that just came up during COVID. But we'll definitely follow up and see if that's the reason for this issue.
All right, so
yes, and Commissioner Selledge had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me? This is my first time talking today.
Yeah.
Okay. On behalf of the Veterans Council, we've been following this issue for a number of years, and thanks to former Congressman Spano, we've been able to move this up to the current point. And we have looked at sites from County Line Road east to Haines City, and this site, in my opinion, and I don't speak on behalf of the Veterans Council officially, but this site puts it in Lakeland, which is, and right on the Parkway. And remember, this serves veterans all over the county and region. So the Parkway has easy access,
And I'd also remind the commission that if this doesn't go there, we all know that site next to Sam's and across from Lowe's and all is going to be developed. So traffic is going to be an issue regarding this site, whether we choose this option or not. So I would ask the commission to support this. It puts the veterans, the VA clinic in Lakeland. It's right next to the parkway, allowing easy access and egress by veterans using it from all over the region. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and I want to underscore that appropriateness of the location will make it handy, as you have said. So then it's really a matter of us handling some of the traffic concerns. Teresa, did you want to add anything to that end?
Just that I know at the last, we're at the agenda study back in December when this was discussed, because traffic was of a concern. The commission had asked for a workshop to be scheduled just to look at the Southeast in general. And as a reminder, that has been scheduled for February the 15th. But, outside of that workshop, that, planning staff and Chuck reviewed the traffic analysis and are comfortable with the mitigation package that's been put together to address any impacts that would be a result of this project specifically.
All right, any other questions on this for Commissioner McLeod? And good morning, sir.
Good morning. I think there were some others. I think Commissioner Walker, were you ahead of me?
I was going to make a comment very similar to what Commissioner Salvage has said, so I bow out. It's yours, sir.
Oh, thank you. I concur. Chuck, I think we talked about this at the last agenda study, but can you comment on the impact to that intersection at Lakeland Highlands and Meadowland Park Boulevard, just as we're talking about traffic and the ability to handle that impact?
Thank you, Commissioner. In terms of the traffic analysis, really the intersection at Lakeland Highlands and Meadowland Park Drive will still operate well, definitely within the city's level of service standards, even with the addition of the project traffic. I think one of the challenges we've had in this area, and this was something that certainly we talked a lot about with the Orlando Health case as well, is what happens to the traffic as you get further north towards Edgewood Drive, west of Lakeland Highlands, and then US 98 north of Edgewood. And so we've really worked with with Orlando Health on the transit mitigation package. We also have some transit conditions related to the VA clinic as well, because right now this site's not served by any bus service operated by the Citrus Connection. So we've got a condition that either requires they pay for the purchase of a small bus and operating cost for a service, or operate their own service to carry clients to and from this site. The challenges we have with the network, of course, is that the funding reductions that we're seeing at the state level have really pushed off some of the operational improvements that we were hoping we could get on 98 from the Sylvester Road area to the north. Public Works right now, they're evaluating the feasibility of a traffic signal, or reinstalling the traffic signal at Edgewood Drive, or not Edgewood, at New Jersey Road and Sylvester. And so there's some things that we're, between the city and the state that I think that we're going to be able to do to make the situation at least not get any worse north of Edgewood Drive. But that's really where we find the issues with the network. And just so that everybody knows too, Edgewood Drive in our comprehensive plan is designated as a constrained roadway. So, we're not, it's not feasible to 4-lane Edgewood Drive any further to the west. And so, there's some things that are coming up fairly soon with the Polk Parkway, the electronic toll collection conversion project, which will be coming up soon, which will make it more of an attractive, alternate route if you're trying to get over to the Hardin Boulevard or Ford Avenue corridor. We'll be talking about all these projects, I know, coming up at a workshop scheduled in mid-February. But there's some things that are happening that I think are going to be positive. But ultimately, it's trying to find a way to get more more transit service into this part of the city, and to really get 98 improved from Edgewood North. And I think that will help divert some of the traffic that we're seeing on Edgewood and New Jersey Road back over to US 98. And that's really been our Achilles heel for a number of years in this part of the city.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Chuck. Do you know if they've done any studies? It may alleviate some pressure if there's a way we could get off of the Parkway onto Cleveland Heights.
That was I know that was evaluated as part of the original Parkway design. I think it was judged to be too close to the Florida Avenue interchange, and in fact now I would say that, you know, based on what we have on the north side of the Parkway with the elementary school and Peterson Park, and of course with the residential on the south side of the Parkway, I think it'd be very difficult to get an interchange in because of the community impact of that type of facility. And in fact, that was one of the reasons, and I know Greg James has, you know, a better history on it than I do, but when Cleveland Heights was improved about 2002, 2003, that's why we ended up going with a 2-lane section with improved sidewalks and turn lanes from the Parkway South, because the Lakeland Highlands Road was getting the interchange, and so that's where the 4-lane improvement ended up going. So I know Cleveland Heights has been that interchange area, that overpass has been talked about over a number of years, but it was really because of the spacing of the relative to Florida Avenue, the elementary school in the park, and then since that time, you know, we've put in some more traffic management type investments in Cleveland Heights, just because we knew that we would never get an interchange at that location.
I'm looking for any other participation. Okay, Chuck, thank you. That's very, very valuable. All right, Mr. Davis, let's go on.
All right, number 3 is simply second reading of the vacation of unimproved right-of-way north of the Par 3 on George Jenkins Boulevard. It's going to connect a existing mini warehouse development with some other property owned by the same owners on the other side of this alley. I don't think we had a good aerial for you last time. Teresa, can you pull that aerial up just to show where this is, where this alley is?
I'm attempting to get it up, and for some reason I can't get my screen to show. There it is.
So you can see the mini warehouse to the north of the alley, and the people who own that mini warehouse development also own the property just to the south of the alley to be vacated.
Okay, any questions on this one at all? Commissioner Walker.
If I'm not mistaken, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and not particularly no objection, but I know there's that older mobile home, manufactured home community there. Have you had any challenges or anyone objecting to hearing about maybe possible expansion, that kind of thing?
I haven't heard anything. Teresa, would it require rezoning for them to turn the property on the south into many warehouses as well, if you know?
I don't know offhand. I would have to look at the zoning. I would think, just given the parcel arrangement out there, that it likely has commercial zoning and that would be allowed, but I would have to verify that, and I can do that before Monday.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Teresa.
Excellent. Any other questions on this? All right, next.
The next is the addition of some properties to the Lakeland Central Park PUD, northwest or northeast of the Parkway and west of Airport Road. Teresa, can you show where that is?
Okay. Any questions at all? All right, next.
All right, next is the Carolyn Lakes rezoning to add, expand the number of multifamily units that are allowed on the parcel in question from 142 to 300. I guess before we get into that, there are a couple of procedural matters that need to be discussed. First, the Carolyn Lakes Property Owners Association, to my understanding, has retained legal counsel to represent them in this matter. And their legal counsel has requested 30 minutes to make a presentation to the City Commission. And I think that's a reasonable request given everything involved with this. So I would recommend that he be extended that 30 minutes to present to the City Commission. I think he has some multimedia presentations. So Kevin, I believe, will be working with him to get that queued up at the RP Funding Center. And then given that there's a spokesperson, hopefully that would reduce the need for other comment, but I think we should still provide an opportunity for other comment as well. And obviously the City Commission has the ability to, manage that so that there's not repetitive or redundant or irrelevant comment. So possibly just extend the same typical time limits on other comment, but grant their spokesperson that additional time.
I am very much personally in favor of extending the attorney that 30 minutes. I would like to modify the comments to 3 minutes thereafter, having given the fact that we're providing the 30 minutes. And also, so this is a recommendation, and I want you fellow commissioners to respond to this. And also make certain that we're asking those who are making comments to try and make unique comments so that if something that has been covered as a point, that would be, considered represented to the commission from Carolyn Lakes. The only reason I'm making this cautioning is to make sure we utilize everyone's time well. Here is broadly all the issues that need to be discussed as possible without having the redundancy that just makes it long. Otherwise, thoughts on by commissioners? Commissioner McCarthy, then Commissioner Walker.
I agree with your recommendation, Mayor. Thank you for bringing that up. And I do concur that the 30 minutes for their legal counsel, I'm amiable to that and hope that they can come in and share that information. This is a very, not controversial, but there are a lot of properties and homes out there and homeowners, and I think they have viable concerns. So letting them speak and have representation, I think, is really a great part of the process.
Commissioner Walker?
I concur, but I have a question, and maybe it's too far-fetched in my questioning, but I want to make sure I heard from my legal counsel, because we now have legal representation from the Carolyn Lakes residents. Do you foresee any kind of situation, however this particular vote may go, that could cause us any possible legal situations? And maybe it's a far-fetched question at this point. I just thought I'd put it out there.
Right. I don't foresee anything that would pose a monetary threat to the city. I certainly would operate under the assumption that whatever you vote on Monday is going to be appealed by one party or the other, which would typically involve an appeal to circuit court. Circuit court would review the record. It's called a certiorari, petition for certiorari action, which it just means that the circuit court would review the record that was created at the hearing on Tuesday and determine, whether the city commission afforded due process to the parties, followed its, laws and its land development code and comprehensive plan, and its action was supported by competent substantial evidence in the record. And what happens is if the court determines that was all met, the court will uphold the action of the city commission. If the court finds that was not met, they will remand the case back to the city commission for additional proceedings. So that's how that would play out. Very unlikely that there would be anything involving some kind of monetary judgment against the city relating to this.
So almost similar to what, if I hear correct, and correct me if I'm incorrect, that we did with similar to the Confederate statue movement and all that kind of stuff. Is that very similar to what you're saying there?
Yes, correct. I mean, with the federal statute, it's just the way it's structured. It's a little bit different than a certiorari action before a state court. With the federal court action, the federal judge actually has the ability to just order you to grant the permit, as opposed to remanding it back to the city commission for further proceedings. Typically, with a rezoning like this, the court would send it back to the city commission for further proceedings. But other than that, it's very similar to that.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer Davis.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. And I concur with your recommendation, especially on giving their counsel 30 minutes to present their case. I think we all know there's some feeling amongst residents that they didn't have much of an opportunity as it went through planning and zoning, or the same opportunity that the applicant had. So I think it's fitting that we give them that, that extra time at this meeting.
Okay, great. So we'll count on that, Mr. Palmer Davis. All right.
And then one other item is that I've had discussions with Commissioner Selvage, and he's got a conflict. We've discussed it and think that it's the better course of action that he recuse himself. So I think his plan is to recuse himself on Tuesday, but I'll let him speak to
that. Thank you, Palmer, and to the mayor and my colleagues. On the advice of the city attorney, I have entered into the public record completed Form 8B Memorandum of Voting Conflict. The applicant's attorney is a member of the Clark Campbell law firm, a company with which my firm, SHR Human Resources, has a contract in looking for an accountant for them. And so under the laws of the state, it's my obligation to recuse myself from this vote. And I don't take this lightly. In over 8 years in this body, I've never had to do this. But I think, in all fairness to both parties, that this is the right course. So with that, I have entered that into public record, Mayor, with the city clerk.
Thank you very much. And you're bending on the side of appropriateness, and we value your input in this, and understand that if you made that decision, that is because you believe it is the appropriate thing to do. So we're good. I wasn't aware of that. So thank you very much, Commissioner Selvage.
And just to follow the statute, Commissioner Savage will need to make the announcement at the meeting before this hearing starts on Tuesday as well. So.
Okay, I will make a note.
And with that, I think I'm ready to turn it over to Teresa.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Well, I did have the slides that were presented to you the last time, so I can either run through those quickly or just reserve that for Tuesday's public hearing.
What is the preference of the commissioners? If you want to hear it now, raise your hand. All right, then we will wait till Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is, let me get my bearings here, is the conditional use to allow a commercial bank in the old Nathan's Men's Store downtown on Main Street. I don't know if Teresa's pulling that up or if you have any questions.
This is where you can always bank on a good fit. Commissioner Reed.
Teresa, is the only parking going to be just on-site parking that's existing there? Is there any modification or anything? Is it going to be upstairs, downstairs? Can you give us a little history on that? What they plan to do? I'm sorry, I didn't find a whole lot on it myself.
Well, let me get to the building layout here. So the proposed conditional use for the bank would be for the bank to occupy a portion of the first floor, and the remaining portion of that first floor would be for a private dining area to support 1961. The second floor would be office uses. All of these uses are allowed by right, with the exception of the bank use, which requires the conditional use within downtown. Because of the location of this property being within the parking exempt area, it's not required to have its own parking. So customers and patrons of the restaurant would need to use surrounding parking garages or on-street parking. I would imagine that the bank and office tenant would make some arrangements for their employees to acquire some parking in some of the one of the several downtown garages, but I don't have any knowledge of that arrangement that they are entering into, but I would think that's highly likely given the number of employees that they would need to have on site.
Is that going to be Mid-Florida, or is it going to be something else? I know Mid-Florida's right down the street. They may close that area and expand their office area or something, but who's going to go in that space, you know?
Well, the name of the financial institution has not been disclosed.
Any other questions by commissioners? All right, next.
All right, the next two items are related to one another. This is the property north of Victory Church off of Mall Hill Road. This is a zoning and a conditional use that would allow them to relocate their private, I think it's a K-12 school, up to that currently undeveloped property that this is that's subject to this rezoning action.
Are there any questions? All right. That brings us to resolutions, sir.
And resolutions is the resolution dealing with COVID-19. For your review and discussion this morning and potential modification, if there's anything that you want to reword, right now this is drafted as a recommendation that certain measures be followed, that people wear masks in accordance with CDC regulations, or not regulations, but recommendations. That people practice the social distancing recommended by the CDC, utilize virtual meeting technology wherever possible, wash hands, use hand sanitizer. It does recognize that transmission is occurring in non-public places as well, and ask businesses to require people to wear face coverings if at all possible within their premises, both for employees and customers. So I'll stand for any comments or recommendations as to how this is worded.
Okay, and I'd like to make some initial comments, if I could, just to make certain that there's relevancy to this and some of the steps that are being taken locally right away, and then we can get into the actual resolution itself. I received a letter last night that the Downtown Lakeland Development Association sent to us from Julie Townsend, who's their executive director. And I'll summarize it, but basically it is that beginning January 15th at the agenda study, they'll cancel their Mardi Gras and Food Fest Friday night, First Friday events. Those First Friday events are outdoor events, which is safer than indoor events, but because of the 3-hour time frame, they believe they need to do that. They'll leave the farmers market open because people go in there more briefly and it's during the day. That's something that's happening, just so you'll know that in advance. Also, Lakeland Regional Health, beginning Monday, January 18th, is going to revert back to their more restrictive visitor policy. The medical center is interested in protecting the team and the patients, and with the high community spread, they've started to see some concerns that prompted that action. So the visitors will still be permitted in ER, OR, maternity, children, and end of life. They will closely monitor that because of the increasing needs. The concern we have is that we've gone into 2021 and felt like it's over. And when COVID is not over, in fact, we're having some of the worst history we've had, worse than July, which is part of the resolution. But just using yesterday's reports, the U.S. reported 229,000 new infections yesterday, 3,700 deaths. There's rising layoffs. We had the number one unemployment claims in a single week since the pandemic began last week, which you're probably already aware of. Vaccinations have begun in Florida. We are now at 44,378 vaccinations a day on an average, and Polk County is averaging 574 of those a day, bringing the to date for Florida to 700,000, to date Polk County to 12,000. But obviously this takes time on the rollout. The only bright spot is that yesterday, for the first time since Christmas, our positivity rate went to 9.87. So I mentioned that and I think you've seen that in Audrey's report. So that's an encouragement. So it's kind of with that backdrop of, and Commissioner Madden had talked about spring break being an opportunity as an additional concern for surges. So that's why the date in this has moved to April 19th, which would be the commission meeting that we would consider in that regard. That's the proposal. All of this is for discussion. If you have any additional increases for intensity or anything like that. So Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. There again, we talked about the Sun and Fun event. I'm not sure exactly what day it's going to be, but I had hoped that this might terminate before that. But again, in reference to the verbiage, I would like to make a suggestion on page 5E. Businesses, as opposed to saying require, if we're going to say require, you might as well put mandate, which I'm not agreeable, but make strongly suggest would be verbiage instead of require. Strongly suggest. Or if you have another verbiage, but require, you might as well write mandate.
Commissioner McLeod, and then Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just not to get it too into the weeds on it, but I think Commissioner Reed, if you jump up to the section 2, it does say the City Commission recommends and urges in the strongest possible terms that businesses require. So we're still recommending and urging. It's not, I hear your point. I just want to make sure that was clear, that section 2 leads off with we're recommending and urging and then drops down.
They're a conflict in verbiage, in my opinion. I agree with you, but if we put something other than require, I think it would make it a little more, the conversation would coincide with one another as opposed to one being one way and one being suggested and one being required.
So I think what Commissioner McLeod saying is that the commission urges and recommends that businesses require is kind of the phrase, but they certainly wouldn't have to. Commissioner Walker.
In the same vein, I was trying to make sure I heard what you said, Commissioner McLeod, and I would tend to lean to what, if requires is something the commission feels is just, I guess, too strong, for lack of a better word, as opposed to a mandate. Still, you can use the word urge or urge, which I think still is saying we want them to do it in some respect, or we ask that they should consider doing it. What do you think?
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Commissioner McLeod, for bringing that up, because I think what we're doing is asking the businesses to require it, that we're not requiring it. That's what we're asking the businesses to do, and it's not directing the businesses to do it. And I do think when you have a private business, it's up to you. If you want people to wear shirts and shoes, you should say that you want them to wear a mask as well. And that's a business decision on that part. But I'm not opposed to the words that we're asking them to require at their specific businesses.
One part of the motivation in this is we want businesses to remain open. Our big part of this is that we want customers to continue to want to go there and to create that environment. And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think it's important for us to know and want them to know. We want them to remain in business. We want the economy to flow and continue to keep an economic viability for our community as it would be. So I don't see it being that of a challenge, I guess I would say, for the way it's worded. I don't see it being that kind of a way.
Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, thank you, Mr. Davis. I think you did a great job just really, kind of synthesizing all of the points from our discussion on Monday. I've spoken to, several people since Monday, as I'm sure my colleagues have as well. And, it's a tricky position, knowing that Florida is really a place, where we're having a migration, from other states who have been more onerous and who have had more severe lockdowns and more government regulation. We have businesses that are still open, and restaurants and bars even, that were closed for a long time, still surviving. And, so the goal from hearing, I hope that the community sees that, we have not heard from our medical professionals in a while. So, we're trying to give respite and breaks, when we're not having as much community spread. And then after the holidays, seeing the spike in numbers and being considerate of our healthcare capacity, just trying to as leaders, reinforce, the CDC guidelines. I will say that, when I talk to businesses, honestly, the big corporations who have been essential have been open the entire time, and they're doing just fine. They have plenty of cash flow, and when they put masks are mandatory, you kind of feel like you've got the weight of this entire corporation, demanding that you wear them. But when you ask small businesses to require, I've heard horror stories of what next to fights breaking out or people spitting in people's faces when the hourly worker is somehow responsible to mandate, a mask on a customer at their own peril. So I do think that when we were saying we're strongly suggesting, and that's kind of where we've pivoted at this last leg of the race, that we want to show that we believe in the CDC recommendations, that we want a healthy community, that we knew there would be a spike as people gathered over the holidays. I was thrilled, like the mayor mentioned, that we went down to under 10%. And I'm hoping that becomes the norm, that really it was just the holiday spike. But I do think it's, the reason it's so sensitive and there's a clashing, and a feuding on the mask situation is from where people are personally coming from, So when it says strongly suggests that businesses require, I think that is what it is. We're strongly suggesting, but in no means are we going to be shaming small business owners who have hourly employees who are not going to get in a fight with a person, who comes in and refuses to wear a mask, or, they're just glad to still be surviving the pandemic. And in those cases, those small businesses, maybe they'll lose some patrons who don't feel confident that they have a strong mask mandate in that particular small business, but maybe that's how they feel safest, to just not, have it, strictly enforced. So I'm just bringing this up, just because what are we except for representatives of our citizens and their voice in this forum? And I think that those voices have kind of felt, the small businesses, if you listen to the economic update yesterday that the chamber put on, it's the small businesses that have been, the hardest hit. And I don't, in encouraging these CDC guidelines and in wanting to give our healthcare support and to get through to the vaccine finish line on this disease, I just also want our small businesses to know that we have their back, that we are strongly encouraging and we want to follow the CDC guidelines, but we appreciate the tight squeeze that they have upon themselves and that they're just doing the best they can to survive.
Commissioner Summers. Thank you, Commissioner Madden.
Thank you. I find myself in the decidedly minority in this issue. And I'm uncomfortable in that because I do not pretend to be the font of all knowledge. So I'm going to take your time to explain why I think this falls far short of what we should be doing as leaders. I respectfully submit to Commissioner Madden that clerk at the desk in a small business is facing trouble or danger in saying about a mask mandate for the very reason that the city doesn't back him or her up. I see a mask mandate as helping businesses. So that young lady can say, I'm sorry, sir, but according to the city of Lakeland, you have to wear a mask. I don't agree with it, but that's what the city says. You see, I see this as a fight. And I know something a little bit about fights. And you don't go into a fight to win with one arm tied behind your back. We've had the front lines, the generals in this battle, tell us time and time again that these steps are necessary. We need to lead and tell people you will wear a mask for the next 100 days so we can get through and defeat this terrible, terrible enemy. You know, I was doing some research and I looked at the blackout laws in World War II. The coastal cities had blackout rules where citizens were required to pull down their drapes, blinds, so that the incoming enemy planes could not see them. And they were required to do that because if you left your blind up and your light was on, a plane could see and guide in on that. So it was done for the benefit of all. And that's what I see the mask mandate being. We should be doing that. Now you might say, well, Don, you're being melodramatic comparing it to World War II. Well, you're right, because in World War II, over 4 years, we had over 400,000 soldiers killed. Because of this virus, we will exceed 400,000 in the next 2 weeks after 1 year. So I ask, you know, why can't we have uniformity across the county in telling people this? The county commission won't even put out recommendations. Where's the Chamber of Commerce in coming in and helping us? So I think that requiring people to wear masks for the next 100 days is what we should do. And so I ask you to reconsider. I do appreciate that we are putting out an official word where we all say that this is the right thing to do, wear your mask. But really, how good is another resolution? So I would ask, I know it's not going to pass Monday, but I intend to ask the city and you to consider much more than a resolution. Then let's go into a campaign where we have TV ads that point out the importance of mask, distancing, hygiene, and really highlight it rather than just a resolution. And so I thank you for going this far, and respectfully, I say that it's not far enough. Thank you.
Appreciate very much your cautioning concerns. So, I know we're trying to find a fine balance in this. I think if you go to the end of section 3, and then I want to come back to what you just told us, have challenged us on, Commissioner Selvage. If you go to section 3, the last sentence, this appeal is a solemn call for citizens and businesses to put aside convenience in order to pursue a moral mandate of conscientiousness amidst a very atypical time. That's what the resolution does. That's the meat of this. If people want to say, I'm not going to wear a mask under any circumstances with the resolution, they can continue to do that. You know, with the mandate, they cannot. And with the mandate, we make the corporations responsible for the enforcement, and it would require an ordinance to be, or is it a resolution?
It's just a resolution under our city code.
Right, okay, a resolution to pass that would enable us to fine those businesses if we wanted to do that. So I think we ought to have some discussion on this, because if we want to come to the meeting on Monday with a resolution for a mandate, then we need to write that this weekend. Comments? Commissioner Madden and then Commissioner McLeod.
I would not support anything that affected businesses in a negative fashion at this point.
Commissioner McLeod.
And just to add to that, I was going to say I commend City Attorney and his staff for putting this together, and I think it's the right posture at this point. Likewise, I would not support any penalties for businesses. I know there's some other counties and have gone that route, but I would not support that.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mayor and fellow commissioners. As you were, I feel the same way as the two previous commissioners, but we're going to move this forward to the county. Is that what I thought this was to move this towards the county as well, to try to encourage them to take a stronger stance as well? Is that part of our process also?
It is not within our venue of responsibility. It would be our hope that if we pass this resolution, that they would want to encourage it as well, do something similarly, and perhaps other cities as well. So we're trying to create a model that that could be used if they chose to. Commissioner McCarley and then Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Selvage, we really appreciate you and your passion for this and your historical overview of it. My concern, and agreeing with Commissioner Madden and McLeod and Reed, is that when we look at nationally places that are under complete lockdown with mask mandates and every other parameter built into their, closing their economies, like we look at California, their numbers are peaking like ours. It's not subduing the numbers as much. We do echo the concern at the hospital level, and obviously with regard to our Department of Health, and that the soldiers on the front lines are really battling this and continue to battle this. But I think it goes back to the virus itself, and that it is, even through mitigation efforts, it is finding a way to infect more people. I'm prayerful and hopeful that this 9 whatever percentage that we're at, that the mayor mentioned a few minutes ago, continues to go on a downward trajectory. And I'm hopeful that that will happen as we get away from the holidays and those big gatherings. If there were a mask mandate, I think you have to tag into that we, eliminate community meetings. I think we beg the governor to go back to virtual meetings for everything. And we highly encourage civic organizations and celebrations and things that are going on to go back virtually. And I think that that's just a slippery slope, that can't be the one answer to this is the masking. So I agree too that Attorney Davis and his team have put together a very thorough resolution. I continue personally to wear masks, and I also don't go out unnecessarily, and I limit groups. I haven't attended church. Our church is still closed. It opened for a couple Sundays and went right back to being closed to mitigate spread in that environment. So I think that where I completely see where you're coming from, I'm not sure that yes, it is one piece of an overarching puzzle that we could mandate it. I'm not sure that we would see those numbers go down in the trajectory as much. And I would like to say strongly for all of our community organizations and all of these large gatherings that, I know we're fatigued, but we need to stop all coming together and just going out when necessary if we can. That's all. Thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Madden. Oh, no, or Commissioner Walker, were you going to say something first? I said Mike.
If I can, did you want me to wait?
Yeah, please. No, go ahead.
No, I don't want to belabor, especially saying some of the same things I heard my fellow colleagues already mention, where I particularly am in agreement with. But I know we came from the special call meeting on Monday, and we were asked to bring this kind of resolution to us. And that's why I think at this point, seeing what our legal team, Mr. Palmer Davis, maybe along with, I guess, support from the mayor as lead of the commission in some respect. And here we are now, discussing what we asked to be brought to us. So I'm in agreement with what I see, and I have no challenges with it. And I know there's challenges in our area, or in our community, I should say, where we have on both sides. I know that, but I think this is something that when we talked on Monday with our our healthcare providers, this is where we landed, and I thought that's what we asked for. So I got it, and I'm ready to make sure that we move along with the respective of what has been drafted. Not so much unfortunately. I didn't use that word unfortunately. Commissioner McCauley, in a sense of an example, in my ministry where I'm a part of, we have not stopped meeting, and we still do those things that CDC asks us to do, and we still have both services every Sunday. And people might think we're crazy, but I don't want to go that route, but because I don't want to put that kind of stuff out, in this kind of a arena. But we look to another source. So anyway, I'm just saying I'm ready to move forward with the actual resolution brought to us as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone. I mean, certainly I appreciated Commissioner McCarley's comments with regard to our colleague, Commissioner Selvage, and his passion. And I think it just shows, even from the difference, Commissioner McCarley's church and Commissioner Walker's church, I've enjoyed, home church. I've not been back to the larger. So you can see even on this small group of us who are informed and care about this issue immensely, have different things that we're willing to do and certain comfort levels. And I think that is what this resolution does, is it affords people the opportunity to go with their comfort level. It is not overly onerous on small businesses who have been hit hard. And yet I feel like the thing that we were most concerned about is, our hospital levels, but secondly, going into, 2021 and these nonprofits and folks who have put off their events and their fundraisers, who are looking to leadership to say, should we have our gathering? Commissioner Reed mentioned Sun and Fun. We cannot afford to lose another spring season. I mean, that's our Christmas for Florida, the tourism season. We cannot afford to lose that again without, really consequential financial consequences. And yet we want to make people feel like when they go to an event, they kind of know what is expected. And if they're the type who really want to make sure that those CDC guidelines are followed, you can kind of, I think that there should be a way to say, listen, we're the organizers of this event. The city has given a resolution. We absolutely support, the CDC recommendations, and therefore we are going to require masks like our city has recommended at this event. It is absolutely, there's no exception. We are requiring masks. We are going to have 6 feet apart. I think that every civic organization, every chamber, every business, they can look to us today and say, we will back them. Like if they want to say, our city leaders have put out a strong resolution today because we don't want to have, super spreader events, and we want to safeguard this event and be able to have it and host it safely. So we are requiring masks. I don't know how different that is for the folks who want to do it, other than, we put the word mandate on it, and then we don't really have any teeth from the governor to do fines or to send the LPD in anyway. So I hope that this resolution gives folks the confidence that if they need to say our city commission and our city is serious about this because it's what we've taken a week to do and go through and to have our city attorney write this up. They can use this as their rationale because they're in fear and trepidation having the event that they didn't know if they should or shouldn't or how they could do it safely, to say these are the ways we're going to keep safe and this is what we're mandating, you know, at the encouragement of our healthcare in our city. And then those who don't feel you know, like they want to have the event or they're not having events, they're just a small business and they just don't want to put up the fight, then people can decide whether or not to go to patronize those businesses and they still are afforded that choice.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Madden. Commissioner Selledge.
I want to make it clear again, I have never been in favor of lockdowns. People want to go to church. They want to go to the farmer's market. They want to go to a bar. I don't think we should restrict that, except to require when you go that you wear a mask, you have social distancing, and you take the proper hygienic steps. So please don't say that I am leading and we want to shut down businesses. I'm 73 years old. You know why I don't go to the farmer's market? Is because there are people walking around without masks on. So the farmer's market has lost my business until this darn virus is over. So I just say that we need to be stronger. I appreciate what you are doing, but again, Commissioner Selvage is not in favor of stopping any legitimate business, church gathering, etc. What I'm saying is we need our people to wear a mask when they go. Thank you.
Commissioner Selvage, I fully respect what you just said, and I know the commission does too. And we do not hear you as wanting to shut down businesses. In fact, we know that that mandate in your mind helps to support it. I want to make this comment. If we do the resolution, and we find that it enables businesses to do and organizations to make some changes that we hope they will move into and make as a solemn request on our part, and utilize the city's resolution for that purpose, then we have success in balance. If we find it doesn't and the numbers continue to rise and we've tried to use a resolution, we move from a resolution to a mandate. It doesn't mean it couldn't be out of consideration if the numbers play the music differently and show that we're not making success. And so I don't think it means that we wouldn't end up doing a mandate in the more dire circumstances if that were to occur. And so we appreciate your holding the illustration of having one hand tied behind your back, because we want to win this fight. We want to win this fight in this resolution by people being motivated towards conscientiousness instead of comfort. And that's our great appeal in this, and that they would be thoughtful while we get vaccinations in place and while we get some stability over time, to try and recognize that when we're putting pressure on the front line of the healthcare system and not doing something more intentional, we're shirking our responsibility. Thank you, Commissioner Selvage. Are there any other comments? All right, let's stay focused on the resolution then. Are there any language changes at all you want incorporated so that they would be present by Monday? Okay, seeing none, I think we've done it. Thank you very much, City Attorney Davis, for preparing that. I think you did a wonderful job, and I'm very, very grateful for the inclusion, as Commissioner Madden talked about, of all the points. That brings us to Community Redevelopment Agency. We have nothing on the agenda for that. And then City Manager, we have some comments from our City Manager. And welcome, yes. City Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And it's a pleasure and a true blessing to see each one of you today on this call. I just want to thank the Commission for their understanding over the last couple of weeks, as I have had to take some medical leave, and this week have been able to return to working remotely part-time from home. I do hope to have a release to be on site next week, hopefully starting on Tuesday. I want to just take a moment to commend our city staff, especially our senior leadership team at the department level, who have been working with me through these remote conditions and have done just a fantastic job, particularly the staff in the city manager's office and with Jennifer Stovall and certainly our assistant city manager, Emily Colon. Emily has coordinated with me perfectly and has had to take the lead in some areas that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise, but she's done a fantastic job. And with that, one of those areas that I know she's been communicating with you on is our strategic planning process, which is upcoming. And Emily's been working very diligently with the Office of Management and Budget to prepare for that. And so I want to thank Emily for all of her hard work over these last couple of weeks. And I'm going to recognize her because as part of the strategic planning process that you have all been a part of in the past, we're going to need the commission to go through the goal ranking process, which everyone has experienced previously. So with that, I want to recognize Emily Colon, and she's going to give you some instructions and the timeline for completing that so we can move forward planning for our upcoming strategic planning retreats. So Emily, if you could walk us through that, please.
Sure. Good morning, Commission. So like Sean said, and we have talked about previously, the strategic planning retreat is coming fast and furious. So we're on a little bit of a crunch timeline during this smoothing year. With that, the one task that you all will have, and I'll email you all the link after this meeting, it is the goal valuation process or the analytical hierarchy process, the AHP that you all have done previously, and it is to take the 6 goals and rank them against each other. The benefit is you all have done this before, even Commissioner Salvage. This is not a new process. It's just reminding you and refreshing your memory to it. And it doesn't take too long, but here's the kicker, you only have 1 week to do it. So it doesn't take too long. Like I said, I'll email y'all out. And it says to put in your initials, obviously just kind of a point of clarification. Commissioner McCarley and Commissioner Madden, you have the same initials. The text field does allow more than 3 characters. So if you would like to write your name, that's fine. Because obviously that's a unique situation to happen. So yes, that's it. And then the commission will have their one-on-one interviews with our facilitator, Dr. Collins. That starts today and we'll go through the next week. So this next week, we have the goal evaluation process and the one-on-one interviews with Dr. Collins. So that's all I want to say for right now.
And so with that, commissioners, you'll all recall that we're on a shortened timeline this year because we removed strategic planning from what has historically been the July timeframe, up to February, which is a quicker timeline. And as we've discussed, that will then put us on track, though, moving beyond this year to have those annual cycles, and it won't be as rapid as what we're experiencing this year. So it looks like Commissioner Walker may have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Rouse. What is the drop dead date again for next week? I did not hear that date. I know you said we have a week, but are you talking about by next Friday? Is that what it is, Ms. Emily?
Yes, and I will send you polite reminders if we get closer to the deadline and you maybe have forgotten. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
With that, Mr. Mayor, that completes my verbal. And again, I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you in person next week.
As do we. Good to see you on the mend, sir. All right, that takes us into City Attorney first readings.
Yeah, the first reading on the ordinance and the resolution are the same thing. That is a proposed vacation of public right-of-way as part of the FERC 1 development on North Massachusetts Avenue. This is some unimproved right-of-way that splits that proposed development site. FERC 1 owns almost all the properties in that block where the alley is. There's one little sliver of City of Lakeland property that will ultimately be conveyed to FERC 1 as part of their development as well. But they're requesting that we go ahead and vacate this particular unimproved alley. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. I think you probably have heard that they've successfully purchased the Greyhound site. So that's a very important development for them to be able to move forward. They've been working on environmental remediation. Looks like they may have to put some monitoring wells in the ground around that area. But yeah, we're moving forward with this, and this is a necessary step of that process.
Any questions on this at all? And the monitoring wells is because of what business?
It's the Greyhound station that was previously there.
Understood. Okay. I see no other questions. Okay, so that takes us to utility, and we have some miscellaneous items there for Ms. Sirianni, I think, to discuss.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, the first item that we have is an agreement with Suez WTS Services USA. Suez is going to be providing the water treatment services necessary for emissions control at McIntosh and the Larson power plants. They currently provide these services. And the intent is to replace the existing system that's there. The system has been in place since, I believe, Unit 5 was constructed. So Suez can no longer support the equipment that's currently there. So in accordance with that, the city's purchasing department went out for an RFP back in September. We received 3 proposals back. Suez was evaluated as the most responsive, responsible, and lowest bidder that would provide monitoring and consulting services, as well as the equipment, materials, chemicals, labor, and supervision for the system. In negotiations with Suez, however, Suez also proposed an alternative, different type of system, different from what it was originally proposed in in the RFP response. And they were the only provider that did propose an alternative system, which was provided in the RFP as well. What will happen in accordance with this contract is until the existing system will be decommissioned sometime in spring of 2021, and then by the summer of 2021, the new system will come online. In the interim, we will continue to abide by the existing contract terms and rates, and then the city will pay a flat fee of $30,000 for the basic 1-month period of service between the decommissioning of the existing system and then the construction of the new system that will go in. This is a 5-year contract, and it does provide an option to renew for an additional 5 consecutive 1-year periods after that. The estimated cost for the first year of services for the alternative system that was proposed is $554,088.40. That's included in Lakeland Electric's FY21 budget. So the total cost for the 5 years of services with Suez would be $3 million. There is a cost escalator in there of 4%, up to 4% per year, based on a water index. And we ask for your approval, your favorable approval on that agreement.
Questions for Ms. Sirianni? Commissioner Reed.
Can somebody explain what they're going to do exactly?
I believe we have Ken Riddles, our technical expert, who can probably walk you through. I know this is the water treatment services for the emissions control in the various units and supplementing water. I think Ken's on the line.
Yes, I am.
We could wait till we could wait till the utility meeting, I guess, to do. I said do it one time, I guess, but I just we don't have to do it today. If we're gonna have a dialogue, I guess at the utility committee first.
Well, we don't have a utility committee meeting per se this next meeting on the 19th. So.
Okay. Then I'd like to hear it now, I guess.
Okay, what is your question?
Explain the dewatering. What's the component of the dewatering?
Basically, what this system does is it's going to take well water and it's going to make boiler quality water, low silica, low sodium, ultra pure water for use in the generating units. Primarily, the need is for MAC GT2 and for Larson plant and for Macintosh Unit 5. Really has no real impact with Unit 3.
Is that going to be like a reverse osmosis or ozone treatment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's going to actually use reverse osmosis, and then final polishing is through a mixed bed system. But this system will be capable of generating anywhere from 150 gallons a minute up to 600 gallons a minute, which is the demand that we foresee under circumstances where we would have to be running Larson 8, MAC GT2, and using power augmentation at Unit 5. That demand, water demand, is quite high. It's over 500 gallons a minute.
Thank you.
How often, Ken, would you be at a 500-gallon peak?
Well, this system could run that indefinitely, but we are anticipating that to be a infrequent event, but there's no accounting for peak seasons. It would be at times of peak power demand, definitely.
Okay, thank you. So limited, but probable.
Limited, but very probable. We've had numbers anywhere from perhaps 6 months out of the year. There might be the occasional need 90 days out of the year.
Very good. Other questions? All right, item 2, ma'am. Thank you, Ken.
The second item that we have is the agenda item that combines the decommissioning of Unit 3 as well as a power purchase agreement with OUC. You heard Mr. Ivy give a presentation at the January 4th Utility Committee in which the decommissioning process was explained, and also that the Utility Committee recommended unanimously to approve that decommissioning. A portion of this agenda item is to request the commission to formally vote on that decommissioning process and permanent discontinuance of coal operations at Unit 3. And this is tied into the provisions that we have with our CSX contract and our existing coal contract with Foresight. There are terms in those contracts that require prior written notice of 60 days and approval, and a formal approval by the city commission formal approval by the commission to decommission Unit 3 in order to terminate those contracts without penalty. So that's a portion of this particular agenda item. The second component of this is the approval of a power purchase agreement with OUC. This is going to serve as a type of bridge between the time Unit 3 is decommissioned and until the new generation units can come online. So the power purchase agreement will provide that additional capacity and energy. The unique component of this particular agreement is that the energy purchases that will be made by Lakeland Electric will only be based on as needed what is necessary. There are no minimum or maximum requirements with regard to the amount of energy that's purchased, but capacity and transmission are at a firm price. The initial term of the agreement would be effective April 1st, 2021, and it would continue through December 31st, 2023. There is an option in the agreement as well to extend that agreement for 1 additional year upon mutual agreement, or in the alternative, if necessary, the option for both parties to also extend the agreement on a month-to-month basis if that's necessary. The total cost of capacity and transmission during the 3-year initial term of the agreement is $23,437,500. That is included in Lakeland Electric's FY21 budget. The cost of energy, which obviously we don't know what that could be at this point, but it's estimated to be approximately $650,000 for for 2021, and that amount is also included in Lakeland Electric's FY 2021 budget.
To reiterate, there is no indexing in this agreement whatsoever, correct?
No.
That's just, it's an important historical point. Questions by commissioners? Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ramona. Just a question about the OUC and purchasing power. Is this surplus power? And maybe I'm not familiar with how this works, but do they have to generate additional power for this, or how does that work exactly?
I believe it's just the ability that OUC has to provide available capacity, which is why, and I neglected to mention that it's contained in the memo, but this was a sole source, approved as a sole source purchase from OUC. Obviously, they're members of the power pool, and they were one of the only pool members that had the available additional capacity up to 125 megawatts to provide us that we need as that bridge power if necessary. And I think Mr. Ivy could probably speak to that question as well.
Thank you, Ramona. I think you answered that very well. I would add, OUC has various participation agreements in the different generating units that they operate. And so these agreements are, as you might imagine, also in various stages of termination to the extent they're at the full term of the agreement. This would appear to be one of those situations, Commissioner McLeod, where they actually had some excess capacity come available. And through conversations with them, we were able to work this out fairly quickly to get this done.
Thank you.
So it's good for them and us in that process. And the pricing was favorable.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, to your question about indexing, we utilize in the pool a clearinghouse price mechanism. It's based, I'm going to say, pretty much on the highest price generator that can be decreased by 50 megawatts. And so is it indexed to natural gas? Not necessarily. It's indexed against what we're actually paying for power based on the generating units that we have available. So it will be based on what we call the chip. But that has been a favorable pricing mechanism for a good long time in the pool, and it works very well for us.
Thank you, sir. Other questions on this? Thank you very much, Ms. Sirianni. That brings us to the end of our agenda study. We can take a look at any comments commissioners may wish to make prior to our Tuesday meeting. Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind Commission and my colleagues, especially so, the two events that will be coming up here over the weekend before we see each other again on in a meeting kind of a setting. And that's, of course, tomorrow with the videotaping, MLK's weekend of, where we normally have 4 or 5 different kinds of activities surrounding the MLK holiday. That's, of course, has been changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, but certainly look to see if hopefully a number of our residents, especially those of us in leadership, to come by the Coleman Bush building on tomorrow for the viewing of that particular video tape that's been taped or prepared, I should say. And then, of course, you got information, of course, not only for that one, but the other prep vigil that will be on Monday the 18th as well, done by IMA. Normally, as you all know, they would do a prayer breakfast that we all normally attend, but that's a prayer vigil that'll be done. Of course, it's going to be done. You can, according to, I guess, the information you should have received, watch that particular private vigil because it's going to be shown Dr. Holmes through his media sources. So I want to make sure you all know about those couple of things that are coming up. And then I just learned that I was sharing with the mayor, he and I, there's a third event on Monday as well over at the Joinery called, I think it's called Bridge and I forget the term now. Please forgive me. But it has to do with some young professionals coming together in recognition of day of caring and all, and giving for MLK recognition. And that's at 10:30, if I'm not mistaken. I just saw a little flyer that came through here in the last few hours. And I know I shared it with Mr. Mayor, but I want to make sure you all may have knowledge of that as well. Again, that's Monday, 10:30 at the Joinery. Now, also, I want to make sure you all are aware of a couple other things. We had a gang task force, and I'm doing this now because I know Tuesday will be a lengthy kind of a meeting day, I would imagine, with certain things on the agenda. We had a gang task force meeting on this past Monday evening here in the chamber. And there was concern that was brought forth to us by Pastor Matt Cooper, Dream Center, about, normally the gang task force comes together in the beginning of the year, as we did on Monday, and we kind of look at scheduling what we call some community events when it comes to neighborhood and community outreach. He asked that we maybe look at something different this time because of the pandemic situation and where a lot of students and young folk maybe have been sheltering in place as far as their education is concerned. And he just believed that maybe spring break may bring some kind of challenge, for lack of a better word, with people, students being out and where they have been, I guess, inside for so long and being out during a week of time with no school and that kind of thing, and nothing to keep them occupied. So he's asked that we look into some other means other than what we have done the past several years with our 3 community neighborhood outreach community kind of efforts where the city partnered with the Dream Center. So he's putting together a package and we're bringing that forward to us as a task force to look at doing something a little more on a regular basis as we approach spring break week time, and then maybe even after spring break as well. So we may see ourselves being asked as a city to do more than just 3 times a year that we have done in the past few years, but maybe even more. He said thought maybe about 5, 6 different times as a result of what we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic situation. Want to make sure you all knew about that. It was mentioned, by David Shep, as you heard, about the civil liability situation, House Bill 7, as he gave his report during our legislative committee time period this morning earlier. I want to also bring to your attention, there's a House Bill 13 by Sam Killebrew in reference to the use of Sandusky funding for purposes other than what is supposed to be used for. That's in Senate Bill 510 that also accompanied that House Bill 13 situation. And just want to make sure you all knew about that because it has to do with affordable housing and monies that could be used for affordable housing as it should. And want to make sure you're aware so you can look at the traffic on those 2 particular bills. Again, House Bill 13 and Senate Bill 510. Lastly, if I could, just to give you a quick, I guess, kind of synopsis of something that I had some meetings with today, this week, excuse me. It was this week with the Florida Black Caucus of local elected officials and leadership of that organization, we have always, and I guess we capitalized on Juneteenth being a celebration type of thing here in our community, and of course, even most communities around the state of Florida. There's an initiative on foot and have been brought before the legislature in consideration of actually not Juneteenth, which is June 19th, for what we call the freedom of free of slaves, of course, during that time after the Emancipation Proclamation and all. But look at what Florida's date was. The Florida date is May 20th, not June. And I may be wrong here by saying 18th or 19th. I know one of those days. So please count to my head, not my heart. But look at May 20th being the actual date that Florida recognized, the state of Florida recognized the freedom of slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation. Again, there's movement afoot throughout the state to have the state legislature, look at that and declare, Florida Emancipation Day is what it's being called. Again, Florida Emancipation Day for May 20th, and not do so much of a celebration as we've done here of late, many years here, of Juneteenth. So they're asking all the municipal bodies throughout the state, they meaning the Florida Black Caucus and local elected officials, to do a resolution to support Florida Emancipation Day being May 20th and not give so much credit toward Juneteenth. Juneteenth was a time slaves were freed or was told about their freedom in Texas. And there's a big celebration there in the state, throughout the state, even on the national level, Juneteenth. But again, Florida's date for freeing of slaves, as it would be, was May 20th, not June. So I'm going to ask that this consideration be given, if you would, by my colleagues, that we can look at doing a resolution to support that, so we can make sure we know our history is straight when it comes to Florida and not Texas. Again, Florida's date being May 20th for Florida Emancipation Day and not Juneteenth, as it's been shared for the last number of years. I can stand for any questions if anyone have any. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. And you were right on June 19th. It is the 19th. And so your heart and mind match. And I think that's a wise idea for two reasons. One is it celebrates what is in Florida. But secondly, it really talks about what happened, which is emancipation. And there's still a lot of confusion when people hear about Juneteenth about what that was about. So I certainly think that's a favorable idea.
Well, thank you all, and we'll move forward with, hopefully in the next few weeks, whatever time period would be, to get with our legal team to provide a resolution that we can send up to the Florida Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials organization, as well as what they're going to do to get all these resolutions and prepare them to have our state legislature look at making that date our date here for Florida. Thank you.
And other commissioners feel likewise. I'm asking maybe a thumbs up on doing that if we're asking him to do that. Okay, great. Thank you. Next commissioner would like to share something. All right, is there a motion to adjourn? I see one from Commissioner Reed and a second by Commissioner McLeod and Men. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same. We're adjourned, and thank you very much for the investment of your time.